I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the same.
And allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Okay, that was my favorite moment of the whole thing. Yes, Mirabelle was adorable, but what I loved about that was a couple things. But number one, it was his mom. His mom, Beverly, who just hit 10 years clean from her heroin addiction. And I got to tell you, like, this actually kind of makes me kind of emotional, but like the way she looks kind of reminds me of my sister, you know, who was also an addict, recovering like Beverly, but, you know, like a little weathered, like beautiful, but a little weathered. You can tell this person's not had the easiest life. And look at her, you guys. It's so sweet. She's there seeing her son sworn in as the vice president. Like, if you know his story, and I know it's, you know, well now, but like, he suffered, you know, he suffered so mightily. His dad abandoned them. His mom had man after man in the house. His mom had a history of abuse, and he writes all about the time she drove him 90 miles an hour in a car and threatened to kill them both, and he was terrified and the police came. He heard a lot of domestic violence in the house. He never knew what pajamas were. He slept in blue jeans, as he said most hillbilly kids did, most of their upbringing. He had Pepsi in his baby bottle. So he had a weight problem most of his life. He still struggles with it. He had absolutely no signs that something wonderful would happen in his life. None whatsoever. And he had the blessing of some strong women around him. His mama, chief among them, who became a national figure when he wrote Hillbilly Elegy. His sister, Lindsay, with whom he has a very close, loving relationship. She's 5 years older. Amy Chua, professor at Yale Law School, who really is one of the reasons he is up there today. She saw him as something special and helped him, encourage him to write that book, which changed everything. Usha, who he met at Yale Law School. And inside this abusive environment was a really smart, gifted kid. And Mama saw it. She kicked his ass. She was merciless on him. She made him work hard and keep his marks up and so on. And he wound up using the military to go to college. He went to Ohio State, and he did really well. Like, he crushed Ohio State in 2 years with a double major. And the next thing you knew, he was like, you know what the hell? He applied to Yale Law School and got in. And that, I'm sure, was the biggest game changer of his life, you know, getting into Yale Law School.
And he served.
He served as a Marine for 5 years, I think it was. And like, to see him up there and to see his loving mother, who I'm sure this is by far the greatest accomplishment she's seen in her own life. You know, I mean, her daughter Lindsay's great too, but this is remarkable. Be alive for it, you know, like be able to take it in, because JD Vance is young. JD Vance just turned 40 a few months ago, which is why he has toddlers up there with him. And that's another piece of the wonderful moment, which is we're going to have him for, God willing, decades to come. And if all goes well, he could be the person to whom Trump passes the baton in 4 years to keep this whole thing going. So anyway, for me, by far, number one moment.
You know, there's another aspect of that. I looked at it and saw something different, which is interesting, but there were a lot of storylines colliding in that moment, which is that he chose Brett Kavanaugh, Supreme Court Justice, to administer the oath to him. And his wife, Usha, clerked for Kavanaugh, I believe, on the D.C. circuit, and then she clerked for John Roberts. So she was a clerk to the two guys who were up there administering the oaths of office. And I had a conversation with JD way back when, before he ran for any kind of office, who relayed the impact that Kavanaugh's ordeal had on him and sort of the way he saw things. Well, Trump played a big role in sticking by Kavanaugh and getting him elected to the court. And Kavanaugh is also a longtime friend of Amy Chua's at Yale. And her daughter, I believe, also clerked for him. So he's sort of a central figure in all of this. And it was really nice to see him up there sort of tying it all together.
Totally agree. No, I thought the same thing. And I thought both of those guys have come under serious fire from leftists who are out to ruin them. JD, there was a period where even the Republican Party was saying he's not going to make it, that they're going to pull him after Trump named him, that he wasn't going to survive childless cat lady. And by the way, for the record, I said from the beginning, you people are fools. That is not going to happen. He will remain the nominee. And Trump stood by him too. Trump did not waver on JD. He did not waver on Brett Kavanaugh. And so there was a poetic justice to Kavanaugh being the one to administer the oath to JD today.
Well, and I think if you told venture capitalist author JD Vance that in 2025, Brett Kavanaugh, like tell him, you know, what year was that, 2018 when the Kavanaugh stuff happened?
Yep, yeah.
Tell him in November of 2018 that in just 7 years, you will have your hand on the Bible and Brett Kavanaugh will be the man swearing you in as vice president of the United States.
Oh my.
I mean, JD Vance's story is so irresistible that even Ron Howard made a Netflix movie about it. And as we were
That
just...
was before he was a known Republican Trump supporter.
Right. And it gave me chills as you were walking us through his background, Megyn, because, you know, that doesn't get to happen. That doesn't happen to a lot of people. It actually doesn't happen to a lot of people in our politics anymore because of the way upward mobility and things have gotten stagnated. And he beat the odds. And there he is. He has the story that I think the press would be slobbering over right now if he were a Democrat. And we're hearing none of it.
Not to mention he married a woman who happens to be brown and he has mixed race kids, which they would be celebrating too. But instead they tell us he too is a white supremacist who's working for a white supremacist now. It doesn't count.
By the way, I literally heard that on NPR as I was coming over here.
Oh.
Yeah, in the car. They were talking about how Donald Trump stands for white supremacy.
Not a lot of people of color except Second Lady of the United States.
And the children.
Right, in the show. You know, in fact, you guys, can we pull over the soundbite of JD Vance in my interview of him in 2017 on when I said, "Are you going to run for office?" and his reaction to it. I think you guys can probably find it. We've played it before, but it's a great one. When I interviewed him back then, so I feel like we can almost say exactly what he would have said. He wouldn't have believed that, you know? It was clear when I sat with him in 17 that he was possibly contemplating a future in politics because he had just left Peter Thiel and working for him in Silicon Valley. And he told me one of the reasons he left is here he is, you know, this Midwestern guy from Ohio who didn't have a lot of travel in his life growing up, if any, Kentucky, as we know, down in the holla. But he goes out to San Francisco and he said people are openly defecating on the streets. He's like, I got to get out of here. Like, I can't survive in this. If this is San Francisco, I'm out. So he comes back home and he started, you know, this sort of initiative where he was going to help people like him get out into the workforce. And it never really went anywhere, but it always seemed like a placeholder to sort of rejigger the next step. And he and Usha were just starting their children, their family. She was super pregnant.
His wife was clerking too and had a newborn baby while she clerked for the court. And he played a big role in helping her out while she was doing something else.
That's why it's so insane when people are trying to say that he doesn't like women. It's like, what kind of a husband who's very accomplished in his own right and went to Yale Law School and worked in Silicon Valley would be that supportive of his very busy wife who's pregnant with their child, who then is clerking on the Supreme Court? Obviously, he's a very evolved man. And, you know, again, if he were a Democrat, they'd be calling him a feminist.
He would have gotten the Emhoff treatment.
Totally.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Oh, the wife guy. Yeah.
Yeah, the wife guy.
He's a wife guy.
Husband.
Yeah. He's a girl dad. He's a wife guy.
Without the cheating and abuse. He's totally, he's just like Doug Emhoff. Increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, regulation changes. There's a reason why gold is a diversification tactic in a market that remains uncertain. Now more than ever, Birch Gold is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. To get your free copy, along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, just text MK to the number 989898. Here are the facts. The national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt continue to increase. Gold can be your hedge against a weakened dollar. And Birch Gold can convert an existing IRA or 401k in whole or in part into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Text MK to 989898 and get your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. There's no obligation, just information. Wouldn't you like to know why everybody's rushing to gold? With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews, and thousands of happy customers, find out more about Birch Gold. Text MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.